So I don't have a car anymore. Yeah, you heard right. I do not have a car anymore. And some of you may be watching and be like, I have never had a car, or, I've rarely had a car, or you live in a big city and there's public transportation, or Patrick has a car. Yes. All of those things. But the reason why I come to you is because OMG, the idol that the car had begun really was shown to me in this process leading up to the selling of the car. And then the realization after the car was gone of this uneventfulness, this just it just isness. Welcome back to One's journey of unwinding the mind and, of course, your daily microdose. Now, tune in to the latest episode of One's journey. That was really this moment of realization oh, wow, have I released the beliefs and the value of this false idol that so many of us carry this weight around, and that is the car. I remember, okay, first of all, let's rewind. I have had a car, this is going to age me, for 25 years of my life. I've had a car for more years than I have not had a car. And the car, for me, has been this significant place of freedom, escape, stability, and safety. Whoa, all those things. I just did a video for the Kardashians on control. And we just talked about how control is this false safety, all this. That is a piece that the car really represented for me. And you ask why? Tell me more about this, Ashley. Well, I think first of all, a car, when we are young, that is the freedom train. At least for me, it was who's got a car? Who gets their license first? Yes, you can pick us all up for school. Now we can do things. We don't have to ask the parents. One of the friends has a car. I was the last one to get my driver's license because I had a weird birthday. I barely turned the age to be in that class, whatever. I was very, very young. I didn't turn 18 till almost the fall after we graduated. So anyway, I was last to get a car, but I was able to experience the freedom of having friends with cars and how amazing this was. So I had a car even before I turned 16. My mom had purchased me a car so I could learn on it, which I was so blessed until it wasn't. And she caught me lying about where I was spending the night. And my mom, she a lot of times would threaten things, but she didn't tend to follow through. And I know this is a side note, but let me tell you, she followed through. She sold that Chevy Lumina so fast. I did not have that car very long because I was busted. Anyway, shortly later, at least right before I think I turned 16, my love found me. A guy in town had this Chevy Beretta. It was the I can't remember edition, but it had the low ride, and it was purple, this deep eggplant purple, and it was two-door, and I put bass in that thing, and an amazing sound system and CD player. Yes. It was amazing. It was fantastic, and I bought it on my own, and it was my car. Shortly after that, I chose to move out of my mom's house. She has one story, of course, that I didn't want to follow the rules, and I have another story that she was choosing her boyfriend over us. It doesn't matter what the story is. But what matters is I began couch surfing. That was my first real leaning into my car as a place of safety and stability and consistency and my ability to run, because one of the first places I couch surfed at was my boyfriend's at the time, who was way too old for my age if we looked at everybody else's belief system. But whatever, he was my boyfriend, and I couch surfed there for a period of time, and then I started to not like him anymore, right? That's what happens at that age. And my best friend, her family allowed me to come live with them. But in that process, my car always had my things in it, always had my important things in it, and I was always careful to not bring my most important things to any of these houses. Not that I didn't trust anyone, but I didn't trust that I would always be able to come back. I didn't trust that this was my forever space, but I trusted that that purple Chevy Beretta, Z26 I think is what it was my place, was my safety, was my home. And at any moment, if I was no longer welcome in those homes, that was my home. I could always leave in that space, and I would always have the most important things to me. So, okay, that's how I began my relationship with a car. I began it with like, this was my home. It was like a turtle with its shell. And I loved that shell so, so much. And I continue to get different homes along the way. And if you're a part of the Patreon, you know I share this a lot. Like, one of my things when it came to intimate relationships or even friendships was I was a runner. And not like the runner I've become now, where I run with my legs, but a runner in the fact that when times got too tough and I didn't want to face them, I ran. And if we look back at my mom's situation and leaving there, I ran. But you can't really run very easily without a car. You always need that vehicle to escape, and then also that vehicle to kind of be your backup home if you don't have money for a hotel room or you don't have friends' houses to stay, but you always had that car. And I remember my ex-husband, we were together since I was 18 years old. We have been through a lot. And in those moments of getting really scared and frustrated or angry and wanting to run, I always knew I had my car. So even if I didn't run, I always had this sense of safety and stability and the opportunity to, if I wanted to. Okay, great. Continue with the car. And I also felt that freedom, right? That my car was the freedom. It was this ability to just be free, whether it was whatever. If I wanted to go buy something, if I all of a sudden at 1:00 in the morning wanted Ben & Jerry's ice cream, I could go to the local grocery store and get it, because mind you, if you're watching this will also age me. We did not have Uber Eats delivery back then. Like, you had to get your ass out of bed and you had to go drive somewhere and hopefully find a place open 24/7, right? That also wasn't as big of a thing as it is today, and purchase that or wait till the next day. That's a side note. So your car was of much freedom. We didn't have all these Ubers, these ability, unless you were in a really big city, you may have had taxis like in New York. But let's be honest, the vast majority of us didn't have that opportunity. So your car was your escape route. Your car was your home on wheels, or at least for me it was. And, my ex-husband and I, we were together for 15 years, I think. 15 years. I think 15. From the time I was 18 till the time I was 32. Do the math. And through that time, we got lots of different cars. We went through many different cars, and there was times that we were dead ass broke, and we had to scrape change together to buy gas, to drive to wherever we needed to go, but we always had a car, and that always felt like the freedom. And then my divorce happened. And at that point, it was very interesting. Shortly before the divorce, I had bought my first ever brand new car. Toyota Camry, I think it was a 2016. Oh, the color of that thing was like this green, but it shimmered and it was like deep purple. So it was like my Chevy Beretta remade as a Toyota. It was amazing. I loved it. And it also had like this cream white interior and a moonroof. Oh, I love moonroofs. An amazing sound system. Are we going back to the 16? Yes, we are. That's what it felt like. And it was so amazing to be at that status in my life of being able to purchase a brand new car and drive it around and be like, yes, I'm amazing. Because prior to that, it was always very used cars that, were handed down to us or we purchased from family members for very cheap. Not that that's bad, but this really felt like a monumental moment in our life, in our relationship, in the trajectory of our future. And we had also recently purchased a new house, but this again was another house on wheels, and it was mine. The Toyota Camry was mine. We had bought Travis a Toyota Tundra shortly prior to that. And then it was like 6 months later, and we're getting a divorce. And all of a sudden, I found myself at this space again of just disbelief and needing to run. My home, my actual physical home, I was no longer felt like I could be home. And there were so many different reasons for this, and we're not going to get into that. But it went back to the car. And at that point, some things had occurred in my Camry, my home on wheels, that no longer felt like home to me. So I took the Toyota Tundra, and that thing turned into my home on wheels. And literally, it was like I was going back in time to when I was 16 and moved out of my mother's home. Mind you, we had a beautiful house, and I had many possessions, like too many possessions in my mind. But yet I found myself living out of this Toyota Tundra and couch surfing again. I lived in the basement of my friend's home. They were so wonderful to take me in an unfinished basement. But again, what did I keep in that Toyota Tundra? I kept the things that meant the most to me. I remember carrying around my safe in there, my little fireproof safe where I had the things that really, really meant a lot to me. Because at any given moment, I knew that was possibly not going to be my home. And that is what essentially happened. And no fault to anyone else, but in a weekend I was gone and I came home and I needed to again shift locations, and then found myself at my grandma's and found myself at my friends. And it just started this trajectory again of living out of my car being my home. And even when I went and moved in with another boyfriend, I still at that point had gone back to a Toyota Camry. It was a used one, an older one. Saw that again though as my home. Even though I was living with this boyfriend for almost 2 years, I still had some of my most important things in the trunk of that Toyota Camry. Then sure enough, I moved again. And so my car has truly been this space of safety, security at all points. So I meet Patrick and I'm still in sometimes this fight or flight run mode. And if you're a part of the Patreon, you've heard I've shared early on in our relationship, some of that darkness was brought to the surface of wanting to run in moments of discomfort and pain. But thank goodness Patrick was an amazing, mighty companion and didn't mirror back that fear. Instead, he mirrored back love. And so I was able to allow it to bubble up and come out and go through and not identify with it and not run, right? Not fulfill the narrative I always have. So that happened early on in our relationship. And, now we're over 2 years and he's brought up selling my car probably over a year ago. And it just still did not feel safe. It didn't feel freeing. It felt very entrapment because literally my car is the last major possession I have truly in this illusion. And again, it is my home. It had been my home again because I was on the verge of becoming homeless in St. Petersburg and had to move and sublet my apartment. So again, my Toyota RAV4 that I purchased down here, see, I love the Toyotas, right? You're hearing the Toyotas. Became my home. It became my haven. It became my space. And it almost truly became my home to live in. I was blessed that it did not, but it still felt as though my home and my opportunity to run. And if I were to sell my car, that means like I'm fully reliant on Patrick and like I'm trapped in this cement jungle of Tampa. And all these narratives were going through my mind over a year ago. As you know, I've been on this journey of really unwinding my mind. If you haven't checked it out, One's journey and all the videos prior to this, if you're on Patreon, has really been the last year and a half of me going so deep and unwinding from a lot of these stories and narratives that I'm even sharing with you today that were behind the car. And then it just hit me one day. I was like, I'm ready. It's time to sell the car. And Patrick said he wasn't quite sure, and he kind of questioned me and make sure like this was really a decision. And I will say this was only like 2 weeks ago, guys, that I was like, okay, it's time. And I just really surrendered to spirit and surrendered to what came next, and things just aligned. But I will tell you, in the last 2 weeks, there have been some days of discomfort. There's been some days of irritation. There's been some days of entering into the ego fear, but it hasn't been something drastic. I think it's a lot of darkness that has bubbled up and has already left, but there might still be some lingering pieces that were still tied to that car, and they have found their way out. And then I was all hyped up for the day of actually it leaving. And it left. And the guy picked it up. And it was gone. And then it just was, and it wasn't this eventfulness that I thought it was going to be. And I even jokingly still bring up to Patrick, I don't have a car, I can't go anywhere anymore. And it's almost like I'm trying to find what I thought was going to be, which would be this massive sadness or this massive grieving or this massive fear would boil up, or feeling trapped, or any of the things that I always thought were tied to my car, but none of them came up. And actually, if anything, I feel more free than ever, because think of how much money was wrapped up in the car. I think mine monthly was around $800 was wrapped up in the car. And I only drove it maybe once a month. So it was more this wrapped up for peace of mind. And I think so often we have so many of those false idols in our life that we believe serve a purpose they actually do not serve, because that purpose can only come from within. So that freedom I was seeking, that safety I was seeking, that stability I was seeking in my vehicle, choose any of the many Toyotas and then that Chevy Beretta we sprinkled in at the beginning, into that in C. It was never in any of those, and it never could be found in any of them, and it always had to be found within. And it took 24 years to really understand that and to really unwind all of those beliefs, all of those stories that I had created and that I had adopted from society. Let's be honest. When you ask someone if they have a car and they say no, you think, how in the hell do you survive? Especially if you are not in a major city, and especially, I'm going to bring this up again to anyone who is listening that did not grow up in a day and age of Ubers and Lyfts. Especially in those moments when you're like, how do you live? How do you get around? So I share this with you because this is the real live moments of Ashley's journey, the persona, the parable of Ashley, and the car. In the idol of a car, and the beliefs and the values and the stories that were tied to it, and how I have unwinded that, and now I no longer have a car. I can rent a car. And yes, earlier I said Patrick has a car, but his car is manual and I do not know how to drive one. So I do not have access to a car that I know how to drive, and I don't care. Because they don't need it anymore. The safety, the security, the freedom is not in the form. It's at the level of content. And now because I did the work and I allowed the darkness to come up and I allowed to shift my perspective at the level of content and lean in and trust spirit, the form tends to look differently now. I don't know. I don't know what exactly this is, other than a sharing of the practical applications of the Course in Miracles and the unwinding of my mind and how it's really showing up in my life and how beautiful it is and how crazy and insane we are, at least me, with the stories and beliefs I had on this giant, massive piece of metal. So much love. Please comment below. How did this resonate with you? Where is somewhere in your life that you have all these stories and beliefs that you are in the process of winding? How do you feel about your car? Does this, whatever, share. I would love to hear. And if you have any ideas for any upcoming videos, please share as well, because inspiration also comes from you. As always, my friend, so much love. And remember, you are worth it. Bye-bye.